men as well. And I bring heart to that hustle because empathy is my mojo. And empathy is critical when we need to make space for new ideas. Before we delve into conversation, let me tell you what's been happening in our community. Hats off to Kristen Tippett, CEO of Run ROI and former PhD guest on winning first place at the Welton Spring Trail Marathon. Your perseverance truly inspires you. May you continue to inspire more women to trust and believe in themselves. Join the founder of Bahamas Agile and Project Management community, Andrea Pratt-Smith, in her upcoming virtual event Managing Expectations and Projects as a PM Remotely. This April 26, as she shares her insights on stakeholder communication, remote collaboration, and project support through networking. Best of luck, Andrea. Congratulations to our former PhD guest and founder and CEO of the Performance Code, Kylie Stone, on the success of her recent Emerging Leaders Program event with Growth faculty. Your dedication and hard work truly paid off. Now let's go back to our topic, the power of unlearning, why we need to make space for new ideas. Imagine a world where success comes not from upholding old ideas, but from consciously deciding which narratives no longer serve a healthy society and planet. Can unlearning be the key to transitioning to a brighter future for life on Earth, future generations, yourself, and your business? Join us as we explore this revolutionary concept with this episode's guest, Minou Schillings. She calls herself a regenerative explorer and is dedicated to helping impact intrapreneurs and business leaders to shed old school thinking and embrace a brighter, radically different, and sustainable future. As the initiator of the Shifting Horizons movement, Minou will take you on a journey to unlearn, imagine, and transform. Let's jump right in, Minou. Where in the world are you joining us from today?
Thank you, Beata. Thanks for the introduction. I am calling in from Abela, which is a small town in the middle of Portugal, and I'm actually at a regenerative community and building called the Traditional Dream Factory, which is something that I can highly recommend to anyone who loves playing, and that's exactly what I'm doing here. I am playing and exploring and seeing how we can reimagine living, and once doing this from the space and not behind a laptop, which is absolutely joyful.
So, in other words, it's like a community project, and you're part of the project, you're helping, as well as you're co-working in your free time. Is that the idea?
In a way, yeah, there's a lot of different ways that you can actually participate in this project, but it is indeed a community project. It's a tokenized, so crypto-based, blockchain-based community where all the voting and everything is solidified in the DAO, decentralized autonomous organizations, as many of you might know. And you can be a member here, and then you really participate and doing the voting, and you work on the long-term project. And I'm now here just to explore if this is something that I want to collaborate and contribute to over the next couple of years. And I've been here for 5 weeks, and I can full-heartedly say that it's definitely something that I'm very interested in, because it's radically different, and I believe we need a radically different futures and ways of living.
And what a radically different conversation it's gonna be. So, what inspired you to become a regenerative explorer and advocate for unlearning in business and society?
It's actually in the name of my organization. So 4 years ago, right out of my master's in creativity and innovation, I started a business that was called, or is called, the Green Sprint. And you hear it in the name: green, sustainability driven, but it's also fast, it's controlling, it's mechanistic. There's an existential fear behind it. There is a yeah, a really, really hard urge to move forward and to drive that forward movement. And then over the last couple of years, when I was working with organizations and I was working with people over and over and over again, I kept running into the same walls. Business as usual thinking, growth as a holy grail, the mechanistic mindset, a lot of limiting and assumptions and beliefs about what the world is and what the world isn't, that is just stifling us from really changing. And over the course of that, I realized that like we don't need to sprint forward. Just sprinting forward isn't going to help us. We need to shift horizons. And to be able to shift horizons, it's vital that we adopt for us in weird countries, Western educated, industrialized, rich, democratic countries, it's vital that we create the space for these new perspectives, new to us. They have been around for thousands and thousands and hundred thousands of years, of course, because life has always been regenerative. And to create that space, we need to unlearn. And that's how I ended up doing what I'm doing today.
Well, let me shift the horizons and go back to the previous episode, episode 133. We hosted Dr. Grace Lordan from the London School of Economics, and she said, if you come to the London School of Economics, and I hope you will, one of the first classes in behavioral neuroscience that you will give you will introduce you to the fast brain. So the idea that we have two different thinking modes, one slow brain, one fast brain, and the fast brain is unconscious, it's habit driven, and we spend about 80% of our time in the fast brain. In contrast, the slow brain is much more slow and much more deliberate. So behavioral scientists have examined the idea between the slow brain to uncover a number of biases, and one that's really interesting to me is confirmation bias. So the confirmation bias plays very big role, I think, in the way we do business. Can you share a personal story when where unlearning played a pivotal role in your business?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think it was quite at the beginning where I was really seeking for proof that design sprints, like technical approaches to driving innovation, would work. And in that time, because I was looking for that, I found a lot of evidence for it because I followed innovation agencies and universities and programs that were actually like making that point. And then later on, I realized that I was constantly only finding that because it was all I was looking for. But if you then broadened, and if you really broadened your view on change, it quite quickly becomes apparent that real deep change doesn't come from speeding up at all. It doesn't come from a rigidly managed process, even though the design sprints do leave quite a lot of room for deep compassion. It is still quite a linear process in which there is little room for things outside of a certain scope to emerge. And quite often, it is exactly those things outside of the scope that we are working in that offer us the potential to shift horizons. And for me, realizing that by constantly running into that wall was really, really interesting. And ever since I made the shift, interestingly enough, I hardly ever come across that data anymore. I hardly come across the narrative of mechanic innovation anymore. And now most people in the space, most conversations that I have are all about how can we create the conditions in an ecosystem for creativity, for compassion, for life, for innovation to thrive. So we're talking about creating conditions and not about following a certain amount of steps. And I think that was an absolute beautiful unlearning for me.
That's beautiful. Unlearning, that's also a process of making sure that your search engines are wiped of any data that may feed that bias.
Absolutely, absolutely. But it goes a lot further than your search engines, of course. That's a big part of it. Um, but it's quite often also the groups you're in, the conversations you're having, the people around you, the things that pop into your mind. Like if you look at a problem, what is the first method that you go to? What is your way of solutionizing? If you face a challenge, what is your approach? And being able to change that approach, being able to choose out of a wider range of methods, making yourself more flexible, um, that already changes a lot as well. And I think most of the most interesting methods and approaches that I've come across in the last couple of years didn't really came from search engines. They came from the most unexpected, like absolutely unexpected places, where you just show up at maybe a dinner, or you show up randomly somewhere in a park and you start talking to the person next to you and they have a beautiful idea or a beautiful approach, or an amazing way of facilitating nonviolent communications or holding space. And that's absolutely fascinating. So creating that space, also the calmness and the openness to let that just happen. And that doesn't happen if you're always in a rush. It doesn't happen if you do the green sprint, basically.
No sprint, it's definitely a slow process. You mentioned it's a linear process, but I think since you've been learning lateral thinking, I'm wondering how much lateral thinking is helping in that process.
I mean, lateral thinking helped me get away from linearity. Actually, no, it's different. When I was young, I don't think I did linear thinking. I did asking why a lot, to the extent that it really started to annoy everybody around me. I was very, very curious. Wasn't really one of those people. I think almost nobody can actually be put in a box, but I really, really refused. Um, and I was always that curious person, the open-minded person. I was explorative. I was in touch with my feelings, and really actually not believing in the whole like mechanistic way of doing things. Loved the creative approach a lot more. But then throughout the years, throughout I think my bachelor, also high school, my bachelor, I got sucked into the more, yeah, actually mechanistic way of thinking. The learn, produce, and all of that. And learn, produce, reproduce. Somebody tells you something, you have to tell it back. If you do this, that happens. If you do that, that happens. The whole boxed thinking. And that was something that I got sucked into, even though that doesn't fit me as a person at all. So the linear thinking, the design thinking came from that angle, even though that's already a very creative approach to innovation. And then when I started studying at the Edward de Bono Institute in Malta, um, I start finding my way back to lateral thinking and to the power of art and creativity and riddles and questions that are like a shock to the system in challenging yourself to take different perspectives and all of that. So lateral thinking plays a huge role, and it's I think the underlying foundation of a lot of the work I do. That combined with the regenerative lens.
I have to come back with a sweet memory of this episode that I did on creative thinking process, and I invited a local artist from Malta, Michelle Gialanze. I believe I introduced you to her. So, Minou, she did a little bit of doodling, and then at the end of the process, she shared with us her artwork that was a summary of what we talked about, and also it was a perspective of an artist's perspective on creative thinking. So I'm wondering, let's go interactive, Minou, and can you give us a quick unlearning challenge for our audience? Maybe something they can reflect on or do a small activity, or they can share with us something during our chat?
Absolutely. I'll give you a couple ones because there's different approaches to this. To get used to the fact that unlearning is quite a demanding process that takes time. A simple approach would be inviting you to, for the next week, if you have shoes with laces, tie them the other way around. And then then you start understanding that the knowledge was in your body. It's deeply ingrained. It's completely embodied, and stepping out of that really requires consciousness, and you need to be intentional about that. That's a more of a physical one. Another really good example is try to learn how to ride a bicycle backwards. There's a fascinating video on this online if you want to look it up. The backwards bicycle, and they just sort of did something with the wheel. So if you do this, it goes the other way around. It took the maker, the inventor of the bicycle, a year to be able to drive it, and then he wasn't really able to drive a normal bicycle anymore. It took his kid 2 weeks to figure it out, and the child was 4 years old. And the reason why it took him 2 weeks is because he wasn't ingraining those patterns for long enough. It wasn't deeply embodied in him yet. Plus, he has the flexibility of um, of a child to just embrace. So that's why I also always love to invite people to, yeah, seek for their inner child and figure out like what they would have done. And then if we go, because that's what I of course focus mostly on with Shifting Horizons, a lot of the unlearning work that we do in the begin stations is often around growth. And I love exploring the concept of growth as a holy grail, financial growth as a holy grail, by looking at it through the lenses of other species. So what happens if you look at the concept of growth as a holy grail, of never ending financial growth in an infinite planet? If you look at that through the perspective of a whale or a hedgehog or mycelium, or even better, future generations or our ancestors, and taking those different perspectives is absolutely vital in understanding how deeply we got sort of almost held hostage by our own perspective, and that it from a living being perspective in the most wide sense of the word actually doesn't make that much sense. I think this is a really good first step to start exploring.
To start exploring and unlearning. And we have somebody who wants to learn. So let's delve into our community questions. And we've got Anya on YouTube asking, "Hi Minou, are you on Medium? I think I read your work on Medium years ago."
Well, respect for remembering that. I haven't been on Medium for ages. That's been a really long time. I think Medium got a little bit hijacked, to be totally honest. I'm now on Substack, so I'm still writing. I write a lot. I love it. I think it's one of the best ways to help people slowly unlearn and explore, because everybody can do it at their own pace. But I switched to Substack. But if you want, you can find me there. It's called Shifting Horizons.
Shifting Horizons on Substack, but also I believe we met on LinkedIn, and I recommend also Minou's content on LinkedIn. You can follow her. However, don't skip the good part. We still have got some great information sharing and unlearning to do with Minou today. Now, many viewers might be hesitant to unlearn something they've held on to for a long time. What are some common fears or challenges people face when embarking on this process?
That's a great question. There's a couple of challenges that we all seem to face, and I would say there's two ones that are the main challenges. One is unlearning certainty. We are sort of taught or wired to think that our work and the things that we do in this world can be planned, that we can create clear ROIs and KPIs, and we make 2 years plan and 5 years plan, and then we go and execute them. And we sort of have taken that approach with sustainability as well. But sustainability and regeneration, both, of course, are ecosystems challenges. They are unexpected. There's tipping points. There's involved, living beings involved, future generations and past generations, and it's just a very rapidly changing and uncertain um, place to be in. On top of that, of course, we have never collectively, as humanity, emerged from hyper modernity and then made our way to a technological driven but still ecological focused regenerative future in which we stay within the planetary boundaries. So that shift has never been made before. So we don't know. People that tell you that they're expert on regeneration, I would be very, very critical of that, because you can't really be an expert on that. You can't really be an expert in a process that is constantly on the move, that is constantly changing. It's literally a movement, it's not a goal. And this, it being a movement, not a goal, and it being a living system with a lot of uncertainties and a lot of surprises, that is very hard for people to accept, because it means that they have to let go of the mechanistic uncertainty that comes with a lot of jobs that we have today. And I would say that that is one of the bigger challenge. And another really big challenge is, of course, growth as a holy grail, financial growth as a holy grail, and not having that as the spill of your organization anymore, and really opening your perspective and your view to include a lot of different types of value, is quite difficult as well.
Apologies, I have to unmute myself, unlearn to stop muting myself. Now, Minou, I have to stop you there because you are very modest when it comes to what you're doing, and I believe you can fully call yourself an expert, because I'm telling you, there are so many men in this world that would call themselves an expert just having the tip of the iceberg of your knowledge. So it's time you unlearn and you move on to fully telling that you're an expert in that field and you
Uh,
can deliver your
I
expertise, because
I
it
think
doesn't mean that you know everything. And as the great saying goes, I know that I know nothing. And knowing what you don't know is much better than thinking that you know everything.
okay, then I'm an expert in knowing that I don't know.
There you
No,
go.
I actually think that exactly what you just say, that so many people around this world just claim a sort of expertise and then just rigidly make decisions based on that expertise, is one of the reasons why we're in this problem. We're just like heads down, focus, and that's what we're gonna do. Completely not focusing on all unintended consequences, on the ripple effects, and what it does to the wider ecosystem. You can really, that carbon tunnel vision is exactly that. Just completely forgetting about all the other aspects of regeneration that we have to focus on. We have to focus on biodiversity, on water retention, on soil health, on all of these things. But no, carbon. And exactly that kind of expertise, I think, gets us in a lot of problems.
Well, you've got another permission from Agata Ballon. Well said, you're an expert, Minou. A heart emoji. There you go. You've got permission from all of our community and beyond. I'm sure those who are watching us, you can call yourself an expert in your domain. So definitely, we want more role models in that domain, just like you, Minou. Now, in terms of organizations, in your view, what are some of the main barriers preventing organizations from embracing the concept of unlearning?
It's the way make, but it's it's a bit of an open door. Um, Organizations right now like to, of course, finance processes with really clear outcomes. And the process of unlearning is scary in that sense. It's vital. It will help your employees and your organization to become more resilient, to actually navigate the 21st century, to not become the next organization that crashed because they stayed true to their beliefs but forgot that the rest of the world around them was changing. So it is absolutely vital. But in a money oriented, rapid world, it's also quite scary to invest in something like that. That is one. And then the other, of course, from the perspective of leaders, the moment your employees start unlearning, there is the risk of them also unlocking their true potential. And not everybody is ready for that, even though that it is huge. And that is exactly where we need to go, because so many people in today's work floor are actually uninspired, not motivated at work, they're disconnected. And then they go home and they do care about the planet, they do care about ecology, but they are not bringing it to their jobs because they don't think there is a space for that. And the moment you start focusing on learning in organizations, all of these employees might start bringing all of these amazing other capacities that they haven't been sharing so far. And of course, that can also be quite overwhelming.
So, in other words, the more KPIs and OKRs we can bring to the table, the better it is for organizations to understand the corpo lingua. However, there is a bigger shift that is awaiting. And I wanted to come back to your Shifting Horizons movement. How it focuses on business. Can you share an example of a company that successfully embraced unlearning to achieve positive change? You talked about the fact that you were looking for design sprint success stories. So let's talk about Shifting Horizons success stories, and maybe then we will go to the flops of the Shifting Horizons.
Wow, the flops of shifting horizons. I love that. Can we go there? that's that's
Why
that's
not?
that's what we can all learn from. So right now I'm working on in a couple of different fields: food, marketing, and also in arts education. And those are mostly universities. And in the other spaces, I work with individuals in organizations, and that's interesting because quite often it is one very courageous, intrinsically driven employee that says, no, no longer. This is not the way forward. We have to change directions. We have to basically shift horizons. And they start unlearning and educating themselves. And they start connecting with people that have a similar desire for regenerative futures. And from those points, you see that slowly within organizations, the conversations are starting, and from that point it is starting to ripple, and then at one point you can start working with the organization itself, but it almost always starts with one very courageous employee. Rarely that's top management, rarely those are C levels. Those are people that are compassionate, that are people that want a really different, a radically different world. And I think it's just beautiful to see that those people can really, really make changes. So I really want to encourage anyone who is also watching this, that like don't wait for your like C levels or CEO to start exploring regeneration, or to start talking about unlearning. Really just start doing it yourself, because by doing it yourself you'll start changing the way that you talk and that you show up, and that has a really big ripple effect. So I think every time I do an imagination meditation with people, or we spend an hour focusing on, or sometimes multiple hours focusing on just unlearning one part of one big um, challenge, one big modern day truth that we need to move away from, that already has really huge potential. So I'm not saying that we should focus on incremental steps, because we do need to radically change. But I think we should all realize that we as individuals have huge systemic change potential, and that we don't need others to start need to wait for others to start unlearning, but we can start doing it directly. And I think some organizations, like, this is the best example worldwide, I would say, that I know of. I haven't worked with them, but they are absolutely amazing. I did interview their regeneration weaver once. I think that's their job title. And it's Vivo Barefoot. I think Vivo Barefoot really consciously went on a beautiful or their journey, where they realized, okay, the way that we're doing business, um, that's not regenerative. That's not going to help us into shifting to the futures. And even their impact report is called unfinished business, because they acknowledge that they have a lot of unlearning to do, and that they have a lot of changing to do. And they're all doing this whole process in the open. They're communicated about it. They're super humble. They know that they don't really know. If they acknowledge that they don't really know how it's exactly going to look like, but they constantly keep exploring. And I think that's absolutely beautiful. And I would highly recommend um, looking them up, and especially their impact reports are pretty amazing. And on top of that, their whole business plan of their whole product is pretty cool. Vivo Barefoot is a barefoot company that regenerates our contact with the earth by, because we're wearing shoes and they're basically wrong. They're disconnecting us from nature all the time, because they're too tight and they're too high and they're too thick. And Vivo Barefoot makes shoes that are made for humans, in a way that you can actually feel the earth. And by walking and actually feeling the earth, you're way more connected to the earth, and you can also better care for it. It's the same with walking in a rural landscape versus walking the city. In a rural landscape, you see the stars, and you understand way better that you're connected to a wider ecosystem. Um, so they had a regenerative idea from the beginning, but they weaved it into their whole organization culture. Absolutely fascinating.
That's a great example. We have caught comment from Joy Nigerain. I hope I'm not spelling it wrong, who says totally on LinkedIn. Now we have also a comment from Mary, who says unlearning is a new learning. Good to hear you discussing this in PhD, Minou. Now, we also would like to mention our great role model, Cindy Gallop, who talks about diversity. And I hope you can ponder on diversity and unlearning as we take this a step further, because what I believe diversity brings is actually making us conscious of other views, other perspectives. And let me just quote here: diversity drives innovation, not just diversity of gender, but of race, ethnicity, sexuality. The best results come from lots of different points of views and perspectives rubbing up against each other. That's Cindy Gallop in a nutshell. So I'm wondering, what are some of the examples of diversity driven organizations and how they are embracing the challenge of unthinking?
Thank you. Sorry, I moved. I was getting cold in the shade. So this is interesting that you're bringing this up, because obviously life drives by diversity, and if you focus on monoculture, mono people, mono anything, mono thinking, that you're killing your innovation, you're killing your capacity to change. So I think that a lot of organizations that are focusing on unlearning and also on regenerative futures um, immediately go on a path of diversity, go on a path of enhancing that in every way possible, and also really exploring, okay, how can we build up ecosystems in a way that they're open for diversity, the diversity can flourish. I think that is absolutely fascinating. I've shared a really interesting article mm, the other day by Dig the Ground, who shared the story of four cacao businesses, and all those cacao businesses really focus not only on diversity and on shortening supply chains, on technology, on regeneration of the soil, on regeneration of ecosystems and communities, on making sure that there is no poverty drop, but that we add value to the supply chain in the country where the goods come from. And a lot of that actually already requires a lot of unlearning, because the cacao industry in its natural, like not natural, in its traditional form as it's been for the last couple of decades, is in many cases, uh, for example, cacao is grown in Africa or South America, and then it's shipped to Switzerland, to Calabout, and that is where it's processed. So all the value is added in Switzerland, which means that it's taken out of the country where it's grown. And making a different decision and actually deciding, no, we're going to process it in the country where it's grown, that already enhances diversity in an organization, because you are not just taking the produce and adding value somewhere else. You're spreading the value out more over the whole supply chain and acknowledging um, more like the wider diverse how do you say that, I lost the word in English, the diverse efforts of all the people in that supply chain, instead of only adding the value in Europe. And I think a lot of these supply chains need to be shortened or flipped, or the different perspectives need to be acknowledged that are maybe earlier on in the supply chain and that we normally don't really uh, yeah, to be honest, a lot of organizations don't really pay a lot of attention to all the knowledge and the expertise that sits at that part of the supply chain. And I think that is already something that we really need to unlearn. You can only unlearn it through acknowledging and enhancing diversity and constantly staying in the process of thinking, okay, how do we make this less mono? How do we make this ecosystem more connected? How do we make sure that there are situations for everybody in the broader sense of the word, not just human, also more than human, to thrive?
Fantastic. We had a couple of previous episodes where we talked about the fact that if we all come together from the same school, for example, London School of Economics, we will be given the same process of learning from the same professors and the same books, and it's definitely required to juggle a little bit of our brains and have diversity of thinking, not so much different color skin, but really make sure that your talent pool is not just Stanford graduates or whichever university you choose. Now, Minou, let me just get you comfortable in your seat, because I know you're running into the sun shining parts of beautiful countryside in Portugal. And here is a great quotation to use. Bertrand Russell said, "I used to believe that the problem was getting people to think. Now I realize the problem is getting people to stop thinking." So, how can you get people to stop thinking in your organization and bring that creative juices going? What's the process of shifting horizons? You come in and you put everything on its head?
Yeah, actually, that's funny that you say that. A couple of years ago, I wanted to change the name of my business to Company Shakers, because I was like, I just want to go into an organization and go like, ah! But obviously that doesn't work very well. So I didn't.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately. But it still has a lot of that. It still has a lot of it's tension and hope, basically. Through questions, through questions, to riddles, to really diving deep into one topic, really uncovering all our assumptions. What do we feel? What emerges when we talk about that topic? Where, what is this narrative in this topic? For example, let's say scarcity. No, wait. Scarcity sells, so that means happiness is a limited commercial good. That's the case in marketing quite often. Like if you want to be pretty happy, successful, you need all of these products, but all of these products are obviously limited goods. So happiness is a limited good. Where does that come from? When did we start believing that? And then you go back, you start having that conversation. Okay, first of all, how does happiness is a limited good make you feel? What does it trigger? Okay, then what is the narrative that upholds this belief? What are all the different channels that constantly confirm this bias, that confirm this belief? And then we look at, okay, when did you not think this way? When did you start thinking, for example, that good quality time is best had at a coffee place where you pay for your coffee? And it's less nice if you just go at home and have your coffee yourself, or if you go sit somewhere on the sidewalk. Um, Apparently, that is less of a really good quality, happy feeling. It's not as good as a memory. But the moment you go to a coffee place and you pay for the coffee, it's a better memory. It's a better feeling. Where does that belief come from? When was the first time that you start thinking that way? And by diving into that, and by doing that with a wide range of topics, and I'm constantly in parallel exploring, okay, the tension of why are we believing that? What is it based on? What are the narratives? And then at the same time, what is the potential if we stop thinking that way? Which futures then open up? What is the imagined future that we couldn't get to if that belief was still there, but that now out of the sudden is within our imagination reach? And the moment it is within our imagination reach, we can most likely achieve it. If you think about it, we went to the moon. It's pretty far, very unhuman experience. Um, Regenerating and unlearning here on Earth is around what, 3,806,000, 100 times closer. I can't really say that number than going to the moon. So it's that hope, tension, hope, tension.
Hope, tension, but also there is a great quotation that I always bring to our PhD, which is coming from positive thinking only, and goes, if you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude, as Maya Angelou says. Now we have got Agatha Bellon, who is challenging you, Minou, on thinking. And she says, instead of unlearning, can we instead add learning by seeing how to do things different ways?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it doesn't really matter what you call it. Like I call it unlearning, because it's an easy to grasp concept. But what it basically means is any process where you intentionally figure out why you were thinking or feeling in a certain way, and then explore what are all the different ways to look at things, what are all the other perspectives, what are all the other potential futures and narratives, and why do we always talk like patriarchy has always been there? There were all like matriarchal societies. Humans lived in that state for a lot of time, it hasn't always been that way. So unlearning is definitely just seeing how to do things in different ways, but also just seeing all the other narratives that we're currently blind to. So you can call it unlearning. You can call it, one of my favorite writers wrote a book, hospicing. One of my favorite books is Hospicing Modernity. And there it's actually very similar. The word unlearning is then hospicing. It can also be transcending or moving away. All of these approaches, they're slightly different, but they lean in the same direction. And I think for some people, hospicing might work. For some people, unlearning might work. And for some, they might be more drawn to, like, yeah, consciously keeping all their knowledge and all their perspectives in them, but they have the capacity to just widen that range, and from there start choosing different ways of doing things. So yeah, we can discuss and call it a lot of different things. I'm ready to unlearn.
Unlearning seems crucial for businesses to adopt a more sustainable future. What are some of the biggest outdated narratives hindering process towards environmental and social responsibility?
Do you have a minute?
We have only 13 minutes, so you better be quick.
I'm not sure that's enough. There is a lot. For happiness as a commercial good is one, but also indeed we already growth as a holy grail. The belief that we can always have access to everything, technology as a holy grail, the mechanistic mindset, the idea that we are complete individuals, fully responsible and not part of an ecosystem, fully responsible for ourselves. The idea that we have to care mostly about this generation and not future generations or past generations. The idea that the wisdom of today is most relevant and is more important than the wisdom of other centuries. The idea that Western wisdom and weird country wisdom and academic wisdom is somehow more valuable than feeling or intuition or natural, creative, and all the other types of intelligence. Um, the idea that we have to focus on GDP growth and not on happiness. There is so much we need to unlearn. It is the education system. It's just like, no, I get really, this is a
Oh,
good question, but I get really rolled up.
well, we don't know where to start, but definitely unlearning is a good start. Unlearning from the old narratives, unlearning the bad narratives is a good start. And thinking about why did you get up with your left leg or rather than right leg. And sometimes, for example, another very interesting process is I don't know whether you've done it, Minou, but I've done it sometime in the past. During the night I changed my head position a couple of times and I wasn't sure which way I'm going to get up. So that was also quite fascinating how my brain was fooled into believing, oh, this is this side of bed. And especially with your curtains closed, you just don't know where you're going to end up waking up. Now, we have a great question from Agata Bellon. Does any element of contemporary traditional education better help those who want, like us, to think creatively? Minou.
Oh, it's very, very dangerous to get me started on traditional education.
Let's play with fire, Minou. You've got
No,
1 minute.
no, I think there's a lot of elements of traditional education that definitely can help us think creatively. I think some form of traditional education, even finding ways to cope as a creative person or as a person that doesn't really fit into the box of traditional education, which is basically everybody. Um, just finding ways to cope with the traditional education system already makes you more creative because it's very hard. You have to jump hoops to be able to sustain and to thrive in that system and to even make it true. And then of course the Oh, I'm really struggling here. I don't love the education system as it is right now, but the way that the way that students are invited to think critically and also to have a strong focus on the outside world and future oriented, I think that definitely helps creativity. I think in many ways, to be honest, like especially primary and high schools. I mean, I went to Montessori and Jenaplan myself, so luckily I have a different experience myself, but I think a lot of these educational systems, they're getting better for sure, but they're still quite focused on a teacher has a set of knowledge, a student has that set of knowledge not yet. The teacher's going to tell the student that knowledge, and the student then has to like make sure that they can show to the teacher that they've understood and that they have taken in that knowledge and can now reproduce. And I'm just not sure if that is any in any way really creative.
Not creative, definitely, as we previously discussed during our creative thinking process with Professor Jalanze. We talked about the fact that NASA did a study over the span of 20 years with students who started at 5 years education, and their actual creativity went down the drain as the education process was continuing. Now we've got IPO Vid, in Patrick's opinion, that's my husband, coming in and saying, I would say a good word for the most traditional of all educations, the classics, ancient Greek and Latin, excellent for thought. Great show, Minou and Bada. Thank you. Thank you very much. And as we are heading towards the end of our show, as a wrap up, Minou, can you share your vision for the future? What does a world that truly embraces unlearning looks like?
As one really big playground, basically. I love play. I think incorporating play in our daily lives, in our businesses, in the plans we make for the future, it takes us to another level, not just of creativity, but of compassion, of connectivity, of collaborating, of finding a wider range of solutions. Unlearning is best done through play. Imagination is best done to play. Transformation and capacity building, like all of my methods, all the whole loop, the whole shifting horizons circle is best done with like quite strong elements of play. So for me, a future in which unlearning is central is a very playful future. It's a future in which we as the complete society acknowledge that playing is not just for kids, but it is for everybody. And it is the way that we connect and learn and explore alternatives. And we we just find ways that are not so rigid, and then we get stuck less.
Well, since we are talking about playing, I like to play with my guests sometimes, and I use this quotation by Eleanor Roosevelt: women are like tea bags. We don't know our true strength until we are put in hot water. So, in life, how are you in hot water, Mino? How are you brewing?
Oh, what? This is hilarious. I don't really like being in hot water, actually. I like cold water, but this is very funny. Um, yeah, this is a it's a tricky question, I guess. Because me myself, like my water, like my immediate water is not that hot. It's the water of the planet that is very hot. And finding a way, navigating that, I'm actually quite happy and that I'm playing and that I'm exploring and that I'm unlearning, whilst seeing so many people around the world and so many other beings around the world struggle and being in really, really, really extremely hot, boiling, almost evaporated water. Yeah, I think that's hard. I think it's the way to be in both worlds, and then constantly, yeah, inviting yourself to keep going. That's the trick.
That's the trick, but I hope you find happiness. It's not scarce for you, Minou. Let's go into the life lesson quote. Uh, can you share it, and how does it change you?
Oh, what you told me, I like, yeah, this is true. Uh, I put this on email. I totally forgot which one I did actually.
Well, it's
Oh,
I have to tell you, Friedrich Nietzsche,
oh
and those
yeah.
who were seen dancing were thought to be insane, and those who not hear the music.
This is very typical. I have around I think 50 favorite quotes that I just keep spewing out depending on the moment. And like, I love all of them. I love this one as well. I think this one is really interesting because this is what it feels right now for me when you're like when you step into a world of play and unlearning and thinking and connecting to people in the regenerative space is we sort of found a joy. Um, I found a way of living, of connecting to other people that makes so much more sense. That just puts me at ease. That just makes me laugh. And it's like the music. We're hearing the music. But then when I step out of my bubbles, there's many of them actually, into a world where I often get looked at funny because people are not hearing the music yet. They're not dancing yet. And I think that's also one of the reasons why I want people to unlearn, because only through unlearning can you cut through the noise and actually start hearing the music.
That's not really a positive note here, Mino, because
Positive.
Nietzsche wasn't really a positive, thinker. But I guess we are today not just delivering positivity hacks today, but hopefully your imagination is going to bring us some positive guest. So imagine the world that you could travel anywhere and invite any guest to have a private breakfast with. Who would you invite, and where would you meet them for this private breakfast?
Yeah, this one is really, really easy. I would love to have breakfast with a humpback whale above a thriving coral reef. And why humpback whales? First of all, they're fascinating. They are keystone species. They really, really make the ocean a healthier place through the circulation and through the way that they swim. But they're also one of the only species that migrate so far that they literally live in all oceans. So imagine the stories they could tell. Imagine the story that a humpback whale, who also often quite lives very long, and that they can communicate beautifully with with the other whales, and they travel everywhere. And they go deep and they go far. Imagine the stories. Imagine the breakfast. That would be the best day ever.
Well, I guess that breakfast you may explode, because I believe that whales have got bigger capacity than your small stomach, you know. However, I've got to tell you, I've got to boast here some positivity, because just a couple of days ago, for the first time, I have seen whales' tail and a little bit of puffing from my location here in Grand Turk and Turks and Caicos Islands. So I would be happy to invite you, Mino. Hopefully they can sing something happy to you, and you can dance to that music, as Nisha says. Now, that's all from this episode of Positivity Hacks Delivered. Thank to our guest Minou Schillings. To stay updated and ensure you never miss a Positivity Hacks, follow Women on IT and turn on notifications to be alerted once a video has been released. Next week's PhD guest, Jennifer Arthurton, and we are going to talk about how to smash through age limits and chase your dreams. Again, we're going to unlearn the ageism, and we're going to know how to embrace the golden years. I guess, Mino, it's still ahead of you. However, I hope you can join us as a participant next week at 6 p.m. CET, 12 p.m. EST. And thank you so much to our lovely audience who joined us today. Anya, Agatha Bellon, Jane Nierti, Mary, IPO Fitting Patrick's Opinion. And that's it from today's. And as always, our positivity quote comes from Positive Thinking Only and goes, look for something positive in each day, even if some days you have to look a little harder. Today is your day to hack the future, unlearn, and hack the positivity you want. Thank you.